I still remember the taste of metal in the fog that night. West Virginia fog has a way of settling low, clinging to the old factories and rusted rail lines as if trying to hide the parts of town no one wants to look at anymore. Our little industrial town had been dying for years, piece by piece, shift by shift, until the night workers vanished and only the machines remained to echo their ghosts. I was on patrol when the call crackled through the radio. Trespasser near the water tower. Probably kids or someone looking for scrap in the abandoned welding plant beside it. Nothing unusual. Nothing worth tightening my grip on the wheel the way I did. But something felt wrong the moment I turned off the main road and rolled into the industrial yard. Fog pooled around the base of the tower, swirling across gravel in slow drifting waves. The tower itself rose above the rooftops like a metal spine, its legs rusted, the paint peeling. It had been the tallest thing in town back when this place meant something. Now it stood alone like a grave marker. I stepped out of the cruiser, the door creaking in the cold. The fog muffled every sound except my boots crunching over loose stones. The trespasser had to be nearby. I could hear someone breathing in the dark, quick and shallow. A silhouette darted between stacks of collapsed pallets. "Sheriff, over here." A voice carried through the fog, thin and frightened. Definitely not a kid. I started toward the sound, lifting my flashlight. Its beam cut a small path through the haze as I approached the base of the tower. The air felt heavier, almost buzzing, like the static before a storm. Then I saw movement above me. The trespasser was standing beneath the tower, pointing up with a shaking hand. His voice trembled. "It is up there. I did not mean to disturb it." I raised the flashlight and swept the beam along the ladder rungs, across the rusted supports, and finally toward the circular rim of the tank. At first I thought I was seeing a trick of the fog. A shape perched on the metal lip, hunched forward, wings folded tight against its back. The eyes were what froze me, large, reflective, red in a way I had never seen on any creature. They caught the beam of my light as if the tower itself had awakened. The trespasser whispered, "Do not shine it on him." But it was too late. The moment the full beam hit the figure, an unseen force ran through the air like an invisible shockwave. A high-pitched whine built inside the flashlight, rising so quickly I barely had time to react. Then it exploded in my hand. Pain lanced across my palm. Sparks burst outward, scattering across the ground. The trespasser fell backward with a scream. I dropped the ruined flashlight and clutched my hand, watching smoke curl from the shattered casing. For a moment, everything was still. Then the creature shifted. It rose from its crouched position with a slow, deliberate motion, unfolding its wings like some vast and ancient shadow. The fog twisted around it, as if drawn toward its body. Those red eyes locked on me, and every sound in the world fell silent. The trespasser scrambled away on hands and knees, sobbing. I could not move. The thing tilted its head, studying me. Its wings stretched wider until they blotted out the faint lights from the distant factory windows. I felt something in the air change, a pressure that pushed against my chest and made breathing difficult. The metal structure beneath it gave off a low vibration, almost like a groan. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I was not afraid of its size. I was not afraid of its wings. I was afraid of its eyes, because those eyes were not wild or animal. They were aware. It watched me the way a man might watch a stranger enter his home uninvited. Not with simple curiosity or hunger, with intention, with certainty. The creature crouched again, wings spreading just enough to stir the fog into spirals around the tower. Then, without sound, without warning, it launched forward. But it did not drop toward me. It soared upward, disappearing into the clouds above the tower so fast I lost sight of it in a single breath. The fog churned for a moment longer, then settled. The trespasser lay curled on the gravel, shaking violently. I knelt beside him, my burned hand throbbing. He stared at the tower's rim with wide, terrified eyes. "You saw it. You saw it too." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him it was a trick of the fog or a large bird or a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and fear. But the words would not form, because I had seen it. More than that, I knew it had seen me, And the last thing I remembered before the fog swallowed the night again was the way the metal tower continued trembling long after the creature had gone, as if it carried the memory of its presence, as if the steel itself remained afraid. I stood there in the cold, staring up at the empty rim where it had perched, and a quiet thought slid through my mind like a whisper. This was no trespasser problem. Something had come back to this town. Something old. Something dangerous. Something that did not want to be seen. And it had marked me the moment my flashlight exploded in my hand. By morning, the fog had thinned enough for people to pretend nothing strange had happened. That is how this town survives. We pretend. We swallow things because the truth would drown us faster than the river ever could. I drove the trespasser home myself. He would not stop shaking, hands clutching his knees like a child. I asked him what he saw, hoping he would give me something rational to hold on to, something with edges I could understand. He could only whisper one sentence. You should not have looked at its eyes. I thought he was just frightened, but something in his tone stuck with me. It followed me even after I dropped him off at the sagging wooden house he shared with his grandfather. It followed me back to the station like a shadow. When I arrived, Deputy Hall was standing outside staring up at the clouds. She did not even hear my cruiser until I shut the door. She said softly, "Those lights over the plant were flickering all night. Every single one of them." I rubbed the burn on my palm. The skin was blistered around the mark where the flashlight had ruptured. Did the storm blow in early? There was no storm, Sheriff. The sky was clear. I looked toward the row of tall factory windows across the yard. Even from this distance, I could see half the bulbs were dead. The others blinked with a strange pulse, almost like they were breathing. Inside the station, the power hummed unevenly. The radio on my desk let out a faint crackle every few seconds. My computer flickered once, then steadied. Nothing dramatic, just enough to keep my nerves on edge. I told myself to focus on the paperwork from the previous night, but my thoughts kept slipping back to the tower. The shape perched on the rim, the wings folding and stretching, the eyes looking down at me with a focus that felt personal. By midday, I could not sit still. I found myself walking the town on foot, pretending it was normal patrol. But every street felt different. Every gust of wind brought the faint metallic smell of the fog that had covered the yard the night before. Around the corner of the old rail yard, Mrs. Clyde called to me from her porch. "Sheriff, did your lights flicker last night?" I paused. They had. So I said, "Why do you ask?" She glanced at the water tower with a look I had never seen on her before. Fear mixed with recognition. Something ancient. Because whenever the lights start doing that, I hear something walking around the factory roofs. Her voice trembled, and I hear wings. A chill crawled up my spine. I asked if she saw anything, but she shook her head quickly. Only shadows. And once, years ago, a pair of eyes staring at me through my kitchen window. I closed the curtains and did not breathe until the sun came up. I thanked her and kept walking, but her words stuck to me like the fog itself. Eyes in the window, wings on the roof, lights flickering. It all pointed back to the same place. I returned to the water tower that afternoon. The fog had lifted, revealing the tower's full height against a pale gray sky. It looked harmless now, abandoned, quiet. But when I stepped closer, my boots crunching on the gravel, I noticed something on one of the lower beams. A thin black smear. I touched it with a gloved finger. It was soft, not like soot or oil, more like residue from something organic. Something that did not belong on steel or anywhere else I had ever known. I leaned in to smell it. There was no odor, none at all, just an emptiness that made my stomach tighten. Then something glinted in the sunlight near the ladder. A feather. At least it might have been a feather. It was shaped like one, long and curved, but the texture was all wrong. It shimmered like polished charcoal. When I lifted it, it felt cold, colder than it should have been under direct sun. And when I turned it in my fingers, it bent slightly without breaking, almost like metal. I slipped it into an evidence bag and zipped it shut. When I looked up again, the wind had shifted, and a strange feeling washed over me. Not dread exactly, something closer to recognition. The same sensation I had felt the instant before my flashlight burst in my hand. As if something unseen had stepped into the space just behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Only the groaning sound of the metal tower and the whisper of wind through the dead factory yard. But I knew I had been watched. Back at the station, I placed the feather on my desk. I stared at it for a long time, hoping it might offer a clue or dissolve into something logical. Did neither. Deputy Hall walked in, saw the bag, and frowned. Where did that come from? The tower. Her eyes widened. She stepped back as if she could feel something radiating from it. Sheriff, there is something wrong with that place. I leaned back in my chair. Did you see anything last night? She hesitated. Then she nodded. I was driving home. The streetlights were blinking in and out. Right before I crossed the old rail line, I saw something on top of the switching station roof. Something tall with wings folded in tight. Her voice cracked. It ducked down the second my headlights touched it. I felt my heartbeat thud once, heavy and slow. Did your radio go out? She nodded. Then she whispered. Sheriff, whatever that thing was, it did not want to be seen. I closed the door behind her after she left. Locked it. Sat there in silence with the feather on the desk in front of me. I felt watched again. Not from the doorway. Not from the window. From above. I stood slowly and glanced upward. A faint vibration trembled through the ceiling tiles, barely noticeable, like the hum of distant machinery. Except the factories were dead. And the station's roof had nothing on it. Nothing human. I whispered to the empty room. What are you? The radio crackled suddenly, loud enough to make me flinch. A burst of static hissed through the speakers, building in pitch until it became a whistle. Then the signal cut. Silence. I stared at the radio as if it might speak again. Because in that moment I understood something with a clarity that made the hair on my arms rise. The creature was not random. It was not some lost animal. It was not a ghost story climbing out of the past. It was connected to the power lines, the lights, the vibrations, the air itself. It was connected to us. And it had chosen the water tower for a reason. Because from up there it could see everything, including me. By the third night the whole town felt wrong. The air had weight to it, like something unseen was hanging over us. People walked faster, locked doors earlier, and left porch lights on even though the power grid was sputtering. Every time a bulb flickered, someone glanced toward the water tower as if expecting something to perch there again. I told myself I was being paranoid, but fear is a patient thing. It does not need to shout. It waits, settles. It grows roots inside you until it feels more real than the ground under your feet. That evening I sat in the station reviewing old case files unrelated to the creature. Or at least I wanted to believe they were unrelated. Strange sightings on the outskirts of town. Reports of shadowed shapes near the old rail bridge. People claiming their electronics went dead without warning. Scattered events. Random incidents. But after what I saw on the tower, they no longer felt random. They felt connected. As if the creature had been circling this place for a long time before I ever saw it. The fluorescent lights in the station flickered every few minutes. Each time they dimmed, I found myself staring toward the ceiling, waiting for the hum of wings or the groan of bending metal. Around midnight, the phone lines began cutting in and out. Voices turned to static. Calls dropped without explanation. When I stepped outside to get a bit of cold air, the entire street was washed in a low pulsing glow from the factory lights across the yard. They were flickering in a perfect rhythm. On, off, on, off, on, off. Like a heartbeat, like a signal. I looked toward the water tower. The fog had begun returning, creeping along the ground like it had been waiting for nightfall. The top of the tower was hidden behind the low clouds, as if the sky itself did not want me to see what might be perched there. I turned back toward the door. That was when the radio on my belt let out a sound I had never heard in my life. Not static, not feedback, not interference. It was a voice, not human, not animal. A sound like metal grinding against stone but shaped into syllables. Sheriff. I froze in place. My breath steamed in the cold air. I raised the radio slowly, staring at it as if it might burst. The voice repeated my name, the exact cadence, the exact tone, except it stretched the last syllable as though testing the shape of it, as though learning how to speak it. I swallowed hard and whispered into the receiver. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a loud pop and the radio went dead. A sound broke across the yard then. A ripple of electricity surged across the factory roof, causing every metal panel to vibrate. Sparks danced along the edge like lightning trapped without a sky. I stepped backward until my boots hit the curb. And then I saw it. The creature emerged from behind the tower, gliding slowly across the fog. Its wings did not flap in the usual way. It drifted, suspended, as if the air itself held it aloft, as if gravity bent around it. Its red eyes glowed like embers. It passed over the factory roofs, and every light beneath it blew out in a shower of sparks. Darkness spread behind it in a widening trail. I whispered without thinking, "Please, do not." The creature paused mid-flight. For a terrifying moment, it hovered above the station roof, wings extended like a dark monument. Its body gave off a faint hum that vibrated through the air and into my bones. Then the siren behind the station flickered on without anyone touching it. A long eerie wail filled the night. The creature tilted its head, as if listening. When the siren cut abruptly, it lowered itself, coming closer, drifting downward until it hovered just beyond the reach of the streetlights. I felt my breath leave my lungs in a shaky exhale. It was watching me, studying me, learning me, the same way a hawk studies a mouse before it decides whether or not to strike. I should have run. Any sensible man would have run. But something rooted me to the ground. The creature folded its wings halfway. I could see its shape more clearly now. Humanoid but impossibly tall. Shoulders too narrow. Legs too long. Wings that stretched far beyond any earthly measure. Its skin or feathers or whatever covered it had a dull sheen like polished stone. It opened its mouth. A sound like a broken electrical transformer filled the air. I winced, pressing my hands to my ears. Then, slowly, the sound shifted into something worse. A voice, a distorted imitation of my own, speaking a single word. "Go." The creature rose suddenly, wings snapping open in a single fluid motion. It shot upward with incredible speed, vanishing into the low clouds above the tower. The moment it disappeared, every light in town went black. Total darkness swallowed everything. The factories, the streetlights, the station, even the stars seemed to dim. I stood alone in the cold silence, feeling the empty town breathing around me. For the first time since the night on the tower, I understood something with absolute certainty. The creature was not just here. It was active. It was warning me, or threatening me, or both. But whatever message it carried, it came with electricity, broken light, and the promise of something terrible drawing closer. The townsfolk whispered about curses and omens. I used to laugh at that, but now, standing in a dead silent town with the power grid collapsed and the sky hiding something with wings, I felt no urge to laugh. I only felt watched, and for the first time, I wondered if its presence was not the beginning of something, but a sign that time had already run out. I barely slept after that night. You would think exhaustion would have dropped me into a deep unconsciousness, but every time I closed my eyes I saw those red embers in the fog, staring down at me from above the town. Even in dreams the creature seemed to drift just out of reach, wings gliding through darkness that felt alive. By morning the power was still out. That was the first sign something far worse was coming. Usually when the grid failed the electric company sent a crew within hours. But this time nothing. Not a single truck. No hum of engines approaching from the highway. It was as if the entire county had gone silent. I drove to the station early, hoping to find my deputies already gathered, comparing notes, trying to fix the outage. Instead, I found the building cold and quiet. No coffee brewing. No chatter in the hallway. No radio traffic humming from the dispatch room. The place felt abandoned. I walked through the empty rooms calling their names, each echo feeding the unease growing inside me. The old radiators clicked now and then, but that was the only sound. When I reached the back office where our file archive was kept, I noticed something strange. The door was slightly open. A draft of cold air crept around the frame. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Papers lay scattered across the floor. Not thrown. Not dumped. Placed almost deliberately in a half-circle. Reports on past industrial accidents. Diagrams from the power plant. Photos from the collapsed rail bridge incident 10 years earlier. Every document had one thing in common. All the names and dates corresponded to disasters that had been preceded by strange sightings. Winged shadows, electrical failures, lights flickering near the water tower. The kind of reports I used to file under folklore or hysteria. Nothing official. Nothing to concern myself with. I knelt down, picked up the oldest report, and felt a cold shiver slide down my spine. The handwriting belonged to the sheriff from before my time. A man known for being rational, unemotional, uninterested in ghost stories. Yet in the margin I found a line written in his hand. I saw it on the tower 2 nights before the bridge collapsed. I should have listened to the warnings. Warnings. He wrote warnings. My pulse began to race. Footsteps sounded behind me then, soft and hesitant. I turned abruptly, hand near my holster, but it was only Deputy Hall. Her face was pale. She carried a file of her own. "Sheriff, you need to see this." She handed me a photograph. It was grainy and old, maybe 30 years or more. It depicted the water tower during a winter storm. Snow drifted across the frame, blurring the edges. But on the top of the tower, barely visible, was a shape. A silhouette with wings folded across its back. Hall swallowed. This was taken 2 days before the boiler explosion at the plant. The one that killed 6 people. I stared at the photo so long my eyes began to water. She reached inside her jacket and took out a second photo. This one was from 7 years ago. A different angle. A different tragedy. The collapse of the North Rail Tunnel. In the background, just above the smoke, just above the twisted metal, perched on a steel beam barely holding its shape, was a dark figure with unmistakable wings. My voice felt thin when I finally spoke. "How many of these are there?" Hall shook her head. "Too many." We looked at each other, and I knew she understood what I was only beginning to admit. The creature was not hunting us. It was not tormenting us. It was not the cause of the disasters. Preceded them. Every time. Hall whispered, as if afraid the creature might hear her from miles away. "I think it is warning us. Sheriff, I think it sees something we do not." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to laugh and call it superstition. But the memory of the creature's voice in my radio still echoed in my bones. Before I could answer, the lights flickered once, twice, then flared to life with a sharp buzzing sound. Both of us froze. Electricity surged through the building, humming with a strange rhythm. The desk lamps flickered in unison. The overhead lights pulsed. Even the vending machine in the lobby hummed so loudly the glass vibrated. Hall whispered, "Sheriff, something is coming." Then the phone rang. Not the usual ring. A long, metallic tone that seemed impossibly deep, as if it vibrated the air itself. I picked it up. Static filled the line at first. Then, slowly, a sound emerged. Not a voice. Not exactly. A tremor. Pattern. A pulse. An electrical signal mimicking a heartbeat. Then, layered beneath it, faint and warped, I heard something else. Wings. A slow, powerful drag of air. Not near the phone. Not inside the building. Above it. I stepped toward the nearest window. Hall followed, though her fear was palpable. Outside, the fog was rising again, thick and heavy, creeping around the rooftops like smoke from a smoldering fire. Then Hall gasped. Above the water tower, barely visible through the mist, something moved. A dark shape, enormous and unyielding. Wings tucked close, head bowed, as if listening to the electrical hum radiating from the town. The creature lifted its head. Its eyes glowed. Then every light in the entire town flared brighter than they should have. The bulbs strained. Fuses sizzled. The whole grid pulsed with an unnatural intensity. Hall grabbed my arm. "Sheriff, the grid cannot handle this." If it keeps surging like that, the transformer station is going to blow. My blood ran cold. The creature was not random. It had never been random. It perched in places where disasters occurred because it sensed them. It reacted to electrical strain, structural weakness, the invisible threads of danger woven across the town. It was not a monster. It was a warning no one wanted to hear. I said quietly, "Hall, call the plant. Tell them to shut everything down." Before she could reach the phone, the lights flickered again. The creature rose slowly from the tower rim, wings unfolding like a storm stretching its arms. A rumble rolled through the earth. Hall whispered, "Sheriff, something is going to break." And then I understood the terrible truth that locked my breath inside my chest. The creature was not here to bring disaster. It was here because disaster was already coming. The next 48 hours are a blur of alarms, dead radios, blinking lights, and a growing dread that soaked into the bones of the town the way the fog soaks into our riverbanks. I can still remember the way the air felt, tight and charged, like the whole valley was holding its breath. We never learned what caused the surge. An old transformer, a failing grid, a flaw in the lines. The official reports listed a technical malfunction. But I know better. That night on the tower was not the beginning. It was the middle. The creature had been watching this place for decades. Maybe longer. The old sheriff saw it. Locals saw it. I saw it. And none of us understood. Not until it was too late. The disaster started at dusk. The factory alarms shrieked across the valley. A sound like metal screaming. The lights dimmed, then pulsed again, brighter than I had ever seen. I rushed outside with Hall, and we stared up at the sky as the fog churned above the factory roofs. The water tower shook. The steel moaned under its own weight, and perched at the very top, wings spread, eyes burning red like coals pulled from a furnace, was the creature. When it moved, the entire town seemed to tremble. Hall whispered, "Sheriff, it is warning us." I wanted to deny it, but I could not ignore the truth unfolding before our eyes. The ground beneath the factory shifted. A deep groan echoed through the earth, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal collapsing. Hours later, we learned the foundation had been weakening for years. Rust, subsurface erosion, faulty maintenance, a failure waiting to happen. The creature had known. I watched it leap from the tower, wings cutting through the fog. It glided low over the factory, circling the structure like a vulture. The electric lines crackled and sparked. Transformers popped. The whole sky lit up faintly blue. I shouted into the radio, "Evacuate the plant. Get everyone out. Now." No one answered. The system was dead. Hall sprinted back inside to use the landline. I kept my eyes on the factory. Every window glowed from the pressure building inside. Steam hissed through cracked vents. The ground vibrated beneath my boots. The creature soared higher, then stopped, hovering above the roof. I swear I heard it call out. Not a scream, not a roar, something deeper. A sound that shook me to the core like a warning meant for those who refused to listen. Then the factory roof collapsed. The explosion was not cinematic like in movies. It was a slow implosion of steel and smoke and dust. A building folding in on itself like a wounded animal curling inward. Sparks shot from ruptured cables. Fire geysered out of broken pipes. The sky turned black with smoke. And above it all, the creature circled, wings catching the faint light of the burning debris. It was not celebrating. It was mourning. Later, after the fires were contained and the emergency crews started arriving from neighboring counties, Hall found me standing alone near the ruins. I had not moved in hours. She said softly, "You saw it, did you not? You saw what it meant." I nodded. It was trying to warn us. And we ignored it. She stood beside me and let the silence settle between us. After that night, nothing was the same. People left town. Some out of fear. Others because they believed the land was cursed. The factory was never rebuilt. The water tower was condemned, though no one volunteered to dismantle it. And the creature did not appear again. Not for a long time. But the town never forgot. Not truly. You cannot forget something that watches from the tallest place, waiting for steel to groan or wires to fail. As for me, I stayed on as sheriff. Someone had to. Someone had to carry the truth even when no one wanted to hear it. I still patrol near the tower, though I avoid looking up unless I must. Years passed. The fog still rolls in from the river on cold nights. The grid still flickers once or twice a month. People still whisper about shadows with wings gliding through the darkness between the old industrial stacks. And every time something breaks, something fails, something cracks under the weight of age and decay, I drive to the water tower. Not to investigate, to listen. Because sometimes, when the night is quiet and the air feels charged, I hear a soft vibration from the steel. The pulse of wings. The shift of weight on metal. Sometimes I look up and I see those red eyes again. Not hunting. Not stalking. Watching. Waiting. Warning. And that is why I am recording this. Not to scare anyone. Not to convince anyone. Not to chase a legend. But because of the night my flashlight exploded and the creature stared down at me from the water tower rim. That night I realized something no badge can prepare a man for. Some things are not here to hurt us. Some things are here because hurt is already coming. And if you ever see those red eyes shining in the fog above the steel beams, if you ever feel the air pull tight around you, if your lights flicker and your radio calls your name in a voice that is not yours, then remember this. I saw Mothman on the water tower. My flashlight exploded in my hand. And that was the first sign that something had already begun to break.